This whole idea of this series, when we get to it, is about common people in the hands of an uncommon God. And that's all of us. The opportunity to be used. Now, back up a second. I said that Noah was a righteous man. This is how Scripture describes him. That's a big churchy word. Okay, so we need some meaning behind this. Now, our dictionary defines it as the quality of being morally right or justifiable, acting in accord with divine or moral law, and free from guilt or sin. Okay, that's good. That's man's dictionary definition of what righteous means. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. It's a great set of definitions. But I think to really understand what it means that Noah was a righteous man, to get that aspect of him, we have to delve into Scripture to define it from a standpoint of moral truth. To know this so that we can apply why Noah was God's choice to build this ark and to live through the flood on the earth. Let's look at a quick little unveiling of Noah. This is in Genesis 6. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he'd made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. Verse 8, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. So there it is. Noah found favor with the Lord. It's actually verse 9 that says that he was a righteous man, defining that he was God's choice for this fact. He found favor because he was a righteous man. But see, there's a specificness. I don't even know. Is that even a word? Specificness? I don't know. This righteousness, in definition by Scripture, of the way that Noah lived it, has some specific points that I want you to see and understand this morning. First is, righteousness does not mean perfect. Righteousness does not mean perfect. That's a misconception a lot of times in many people's minds, the idea of being perfect. Noah wasn't perfect. It doesn't say that he was perfect, and we know that we're not perfect. We also know to claim that is to folly. 1 John says that if you say you have no sin and that you're perfect, that you're only deceiving yourself and the truth actually isn't in you. See, this is the actual path of truth, that perfection is not what we're trying to obtain here in the idea of righteousness. We're trying to obtain the moral way of life under the commands of God. It's the first reason that God chose Noah. See, God did not find Noah perfect. He found that Noah had not allowed the sin of the world to control his life. Noah still had discernment between right and wrong and was choosing to be in right living. And what happened was God took note of this. Now, the second thing is that righteousness then is a choice we make, and we make that by walking in God's covering. See, when we have that choice, we can walk with God, we can walk against God. Noah walked with God, the world was walking against God. It's the major difference in defining the heart and the life of righteousness. Many people during during Noah's time chose sinful things over things of God. Like it said in verse 5, the Lord saw when he looked the wickedness of man, and every intention of the heart was evil. The world had made its choice to live without God. Thus, there was no way to obtain that righteousness, because righteousness is not something that we have within ourselves. It's a gift that's given to us from God. When we enter relationship with God, then we can grow into that righteous living, the fruit of the Spirit that becomes a part of our central being. Because it's not what we do to become righteous, but who God is within us. That's the difference maker. Isaiah wrote that in pretty plain language. He said that we've become unclean. Our clothes are like filthy rags, and the wind just simply carries us away. Because our rags alone, under our own power, they're filthy. But God, when we choose him in that relationship, he then exchanges those rags for the good that he has in store for us. Noah understood this. Noah recognized this. It's the second reason I think God chose him. Because Noah obtained the status of righteousness because he walked in fellowship with God. Noah desired relationship. He sought after the relationship. And because of that, it developed a righteousness within him. And then that gives us our third point here, is that righteousness grows with close fellowship. See, in Genesis 6 of the New Living Translation, it says he didn't just walk in fellowship with him, he walked in close fellowship. Many people, they may walk in fellowship with God, but honestly, it's nominal at best. Many people will say, oh yeah, I'm a Christian. Oh yeah, I believe in God. And they know who God is, but it's more like an acquaintance than it is a friend. It's more being a fan of it than being a follower. Again, great book, Kyle Idleman, not a fan. Check it out. What God is all about is he wants that relationship. He wants that intimacy. He wants that deeper connection. He wants us to know him more because he knows us to the depths that we don't even know ourselves. All through Scripture, we see this imagery of intimacy of the bride and the bridegroom, and it's the closeness that God is truly after. James speaks of this. He says, if you draw near to God, then he will draw near to you. That's chapter 4, verse 8 of James. Noah drew near, close fellowship with God. The third reason he was probably chosen is that close fellowship with God produced in Noah the righteous life. One in which then Noah was referred to as blameless. So Noah was a righteous man, but he was a man of great faith, and this might be my favorite aspect of Noah. This might be the thing that I really kind of started to develop while we were on vacation. As I walked through this, I'm like, man, this guy's faith is beyond, absolutely beyond. I mean, let's be honest. It had to take an insane amount of faith to build that thing. Am I right? Continuing in Genesis 6, it says, make yourself an ark of gopher wood. What the heck is gopher wood? Make rooms in the ark. Cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you're to make it. Direct instruction. The length of the ark, 300 cubits. Its breadth, 50 cubits. Its height, 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and set the door of the ark in its side. Make it lower, second and third decks. For behold, I will bring a flood of the waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life under heaven. Everything that's on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. These instructions to Noah actually prove the first point of major faith that Noah had, and that is, faith has to be trusting in the impossible. I can't think of it any other way. Because if I'm Noah, I can't imagine the first thought that he had when all of this is coming in. I mean, do you think maybe there was slight doubt? I mean, maybe not. There might have been, but maybe not. But I'm thinking, okay, you want me to build this giant boat, okay? And it's going to hold all of my family. Oh, and on top of that, it's going to hold thousands of animals. And it's going to hold it, me with my hands against you, God. I'm going to put this together, and then it's going to hold together through the worst storm that we've ever seen in all of human history. I'm starting to feel like this is maybe quite a tall task for one man to fully complete. But in Genesis 7, it actually says, Noah did all that God commanded him. And he did so step by step, day by day, board by board. How many of you can raise your hand right now and say, yes, I'd have the faith for a drawn-out project like that? Not happening. I'd say it's very doubtful that anybody would even say that. I mean, I think we tend to be ASAP kind of people, right? It's like, oh, God, you can snap your fingers, the boat's done, and we can just get this over with. But see, that's why we also learn that faith is not always seeing the outcome right away. It's trusting in the impossible and then not always seeing the outcome right away. Genesis 7:11 says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. Now, why do I point that out? Because now we can discover why the outcome was not right away for Noah. See, here's the thing. When you go back to chapter 5 and look at the genealogy and the breakdown of time that came with this, okay? When you get to Noah, you realize and discover that Noah was near 500 years old when he started having his sons. And it was at that time that God told him to build the ark. So at 500 years old, God's telling him, you're going to do this. So first, let's point this out. It was in the 600th year of Noah's life that the flood came. So that's over 100 years later. Second, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, right? Now, most of us in our mind, when we think of this from a childhood perspective, it rained 40 days, 40 nights, boom, it was over. No, see, it wasn't over at that point. It didn't mean it was over. In fact, this is a concept timeline from our perspective. It says that after 150 days, the water finally abated in the 7th month. And that's when the ark came to rest. But we're still not done. The waters kept abating until the 10th month, so around 90 more days. Then at that point, Noah waited another 40 days to send out the raven and then send out the dove, which he then did for 2 whole weeks until the dove finally did not return. It was at that point, then God told them they could exit out onto dry ground. Okay? 40 days and 40 nights of rain, 150 days till the ark comes to rest, 90 more days till the water abates to a point of being able to send something out. Noah waits 40 days for that. Add 2 weeks, you're talking about 334 more days after they went into the ark. That's almost an entire another year that they spent on the boat. I wonder how long it took them to wash the smell out. But see, it's when you can't see it up front that faith is believing in a God who always keeps his promises. Faith is really believing in a God who always keeps his promises. Genesis 9, and God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I've set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh." Now, I would be remiss here if I did not point one factor out. I'm going to sidetrack this morning and say this. That's what the rainbow means. There is no such thing as Pride Month. It doesn't really exist. And to those that think it does, it's sin and it's evil, and it is not of God. And we know this because pride is a sin. Pride in that way, anything against the covenants and commands of God, is sin. Back to Noah. He took it upon himself a faith to believe that God would send the rain. He didn't question it, but he also had faith in God's timing. He built the ark over 100 years, not overnight. And he had faith that God would follow through with everything that he had said. The question is, do we live our lives by faith that questions nothing when it comes to God? Noah was righteous, faithful, and he put that faith into action. And when it comes to our faith being put into action, we're called to give up and then in turn to give in to Jesus. It becomes about obedience. Because what good is faith if we don't have a response to it? Obedience is our response to the faith. It's what makes it real. Noah could have had faith in God, but he could have been disobedient. And what would have happened? Well, it would have resulted in death with everybody else. But Noah's choice was the difference between life and death for him and his family. And our choices, though maybe not quite so drastic, but the good and bad choices that we make will always yield consequences and reward based on our obedience to God. So look a little deeper here at Noah's practical example, and I'm going to kind of skim this. God said he's going to establish his covenant with him. You're going to come into the ark, every living thing. You're going to bring 2 sorts of every animal. Everything in the sky and on the ground, they're going to come, you're going to keep them alive, and you're going to bring in food. And then at the end of this, in verse 22, it says, Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. And in chapter 7, as we already said, going to the ark, you're going to do the 7 pairs of clean, 7 pairs that are not clean, the birds of the heavens. 7 days I'm going to send rain. In the earth 40 days and 40 nights for every living thing. Verse 5, and Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. God delivers instructions. He delivers commandments exactly as he wants things completed and done. And more importantly here in this point, what did Noah do in response? All that God commanded of him. This is an important lesson in my book to learn early in life, because the older we get and the longer we battle with God on this, the harder it is to grasp and apply it in our lives. The harder it is to let go of our selfish desires and doubts and live fully committed to the surrender of this book and what God's instructions are to us. Noah heard the voice of the Lord and he followed instructions intentionally. I don't think most of us are like Noah. I think most of the time we want an explanation. We want proof. Our obedience needs to be like the faith and action of Noah, an immediate surrender to God and his words and commands. And this works first by obedience is acting on what we believe. We act directly on what we believe. To be more like Noah, we can't question the things that God puts before us. We can't question the things that he's instructed of us. Noah believed God in all things. When God spoke, even when it sounded totally crazy or didn't make sense to him, he followed without question. And when we claim that faith in Jesus, but then we're called to action, we have to step forward in obedience. That's what that faith means. You know, there was a pastor, I've seen this video, an interview with a pastor that was talking about how he was guest speaking at a large church, and he was talking about the leadership of the men with their families and the men in their jobs, their communities. And he said, if you believe that sin is rampant around here, and you as a man of God should step up and lead and do what you're called to do, I want you to stand up. One guy stood up. And he said, he went, really? That's it? That's the response I get? And then the rest of them slowly kind of like, well, I guess we should. And he told him, no, sit down. He goes, if you can't be bold and stand up for truth in your own church, how are you going to do it outside there? Jim Elliot. Anybody familiar with the missionary Jim Elliot? He was a missionary to the Auca Indians of Ecuador. He was actually killed along with a couple of his friends on January 8, 1956, while evangelizing to this small village in the Ecuador jungle. It was a very murderous, warring tribe that they were trying to reach with the gospel of Jesus. And Elliot and his companions are a great example of the surrender to call of God. They knew the danger that they were facing, but they were obedient to the mission they knew what God had given them. And no matter the cost, they were going to do it, even if it wasn't easy. And that's just it. Is obedience is acting on what we believe, and obedience may not always be easy. Sometimes it's very, very difficult. You don't want to do it. You don't like it, but because it's the right thing to do, you got to do it. Back to Noah. Imagine, cram all those animals on the boat. On top of that, with all your known living relatives with you as well. I don't know about you, but it's hard enough to deal with pets at home. Don't even get started on family and extended family. I mean, how many of us just pray that we survive vacation with the kids? Am I right? Sometimes walking in obedience is going to be difficult, and we want to give up, and we want to move on. But if we stay the course, God's going to move in amazing and mighty ways. That's his promise to us. Elizabeth Elliot, Jim's wife, after everything happened, she continued the mission. She felt called to continue it. She went to the Auca Indians, and what Jim had started, she saw through. The Aucas have changed their ways. They're now an unbelievably Christ-filled people, evangelizing to the tribes around them. Elizabeth Elliot did not give up, but she kept pursuing what her husband began because she knew the truth of what the mission was. That is true obedience. And that's the third aspect of this that the Elliots and Noah tell us, is that obedience is a complete follow-through. You see it done to the finish line. And we come back to Noah, back to obedience where it all started. Genesis 6 and Genesis 7, where it says Noah did all that God commanded him. Noah followed it through to completion. He didn't go halfway and stop. And when we only go halfway and stop, it's not obedience. It's easy to justify our acts as obedience, even though we're not fully following through on it. Partial or delayed obedience is just disobedience in slow motion. And hard and very difficult consequences can follow from a choice to not be obedient. And like Noah, we need to obey. Act upon the belief that we have in God, that we claim to have, the relationship we claim to have in Him, the faith that we claim to have in Him in His Word. Even when it's not easy, we got to do it. We need to build a boat. What is our fellowship with God truly like? Can we be used like Noah? Would we be called righteous? Would we be called blameless? Faith, obedience, and redemption, they played out in a man that God saw and said was righteous. So how do we dig deeper and go closer in fellowship with God in our lives? I challenge you to ask yourself, what does that look like in my life? And then, how do I respond to it? Will you question or beat around the bush till you have more proof? Or will you choose to apply the example that Noah gives us and act upon what you claim to believe and obey even though it might seem crazy to you, and then follow it through to completion? Why not choose to just take God at His word? Trust what He says. See what happens. Your challenge? Go build your boat.